Listen, I need to tell you about something that happened recently that has completely torn apart the Cleveland Browns organization from the inside out. What I'm about to share with you isn't some manufactured drama or clickbait nonsense. This is real. This is happening right now, and the implications are so massive that they could reshape the entire AFC North for the next decade. You know what's wild? Sometimes the most important moments in sports aren't the ones that happen under the bright lights on Sunday. They're the quiet ones, the ones that most people never even see. And that's exactly what went down in Cleveland when Shedeur Sanders walked onto that practice field for his pre-draft visit. What unfolded in those few hours has ignited an absolute firestorm within the organization, and I'm going to break down every single detail for you. So Shedeur Sanders arrives at the Browns facility, and right away, something feels different. This isn't your typical prospect showing up nervous, trying to make a good impression on the coaches and scouts. No, Shedeur walks in with a presence that immediately shifts the entire energy of the building. The man carries himself like he already owns the place, like he's done this 1,000 times before. And you know what? In a way, he has. This is someone who's been under the microscope his entire life, who's been coached by a Hall of Famer since birth, who understands the business of football as well as anyone in the league. Now, here's where things get absolutely insane. Myles Garrett, the face of the franchise, one of the most dominant defensive players in the entire NFL, sees Shedeur on the field and immediately breaks away from what he's doing. We're talking about Myles Garrett, a guy who's seen countless quarterbacks come through Cleveland, a guy who's been let down by the position more times than any of us can count, and he walks straight up to Shedeur Sanders. The handshake between these two men wasn't just a greeting, it was a statement, it was a declaration. Myles looked Shedeur directly in the eyes with this intensity that said everything without saying a word. This was Myles Garrett essentially telling the entire organization, the entire city of Cleveland, this is the guy, this is who we need. Think about what that means for a second. Myles Garrett doesn't hand out endorsements like that. He's been burned too many times. He's carried this franchise on his back for years while watching mediocre quarterback after mediocre quarterback fail to deliver. And yet here he is, giving his seal of approval to a college kid who hasn't thrown a single NFL pass. That tells you everything you need to know about what Myles saw in that moment. He recognized something in Shedeur that he hasn't seen in Cleveland since he's been there. That killer instinct, that unshakable confidence, that aura of a true franchise quarterback. But it doesn't stop there. Jerry Jeudy is watching all of this unfold, and he's conducting his own evaluation. Now, Jeudy is one of the most talented receivers in the league. The man can create separation against anybody, but his career has been limited by inconsistent quarterback play. He knows better than anyone that all the route running ability in the world doesn't matter if the guy throwing you the ball can't deliver it accurately and on time. So when Shedeur starts taking reps, Jeudy is locked in. He's watching every single throw, every movement, every decision, and what he sees blows him away. The Browns coaching staff didn't make this easy on Shedeur. They put him in the absolute worst possible situation. He's running with the second team offense, guys who are fighting for roster spots, guys he's never practiced with before. The offensive line is a patchwork group that barely knows each other's names. And who are they going up against? The Browns' first team defense. We're talking about one of the most fearsome defensive units in the entire league. Myles Garrett flying off the edge, Denzel Ward locking down receivers. This is a defense that makes veteran Pro Bowl quarterbacks look foolish on a regular basis. So what happens? Shedeur steps into the pocket, and on his very first drop back, the protection breaks down immediately. Pressure comes from everywhere. The pocket collapses. Any normal prospect would panic, would rush the throw, would make a rookie mistake. But Shedeur, he stays completely calm. He moves in the pocket with this subtle grace, buys himself just enough time, and delivers a throw that his receiver should have caught. One incompletion, but not because of anything Shedeur did wrong. Then on the next two plays, he puts on an absolute clinic. The first completion is a dart into a tight window. The defensive back is right there, but Shedeur places the ball exactly where only his receiver can get it. Perfect timing, perfect accuracy, perfect execution. The second completion is even better. He recognizes the blitz pre-snap, adjusts the protection, gets the ball out quickly to his hot read, and the receiver picks up a solid gain. 2 for 3 against one of the best defenses in football with a second team offense. That's not just impressive, that's extraordinary. Jerry Jeudy sees all of this happening, and you can see it on his face. He's nodding to himself. He's thinking about what it would be like to have a quarterback who can make those throws consistently, who can process information that quickly, who can stay that composed under pressure. In that moment, Jeudy isn't just watching a prospect, he's watching his future. He's envisioning what their connection could look like over the next decade. The chemistry was instant, undeniable, electric. Now, to really understand why this moment is so significant, you need to understand the absolute nightmare that has been Browns quarterback history. We're not talking about a few bad years. We're talking about a generational curse that has haunted this franchise for over 2 decades. Since the Browns returned to Cleveland in 1999, they've started more than 30 different quarterbacks. 30. Let that number sink in for a minute. That's not a revolving door. That's a revolving catastrophe. It started with Tim Couch, the #1 overall pick who was supposed to be the franchise savior. He got absolutely destroyed behind a terrible offensive line, and his career was over before it really began. Then came the parade of failures. There was Kelly Holcomb, Jeff Garcia, Luke McCown, Charlie Fry, Derek Anderson, Brady Quinn, and that's just scratching the surface. Every single one of them came in with hope, with potential, with the weight of an entire city's expectations on their shoulders, and every single one of them failed. Then we got to the really painful ones. Brandon Weeden, a first-round pick who was already 28 years old when he was drafted and looked completely lost in the NFL. Johnny Manziel, the most hyped quarterback prospect in Browns history, who turned into a complete disaster both on and off the field. His time in Cleveland was a circus that embarrassed the entire organization. Then came Baker Mayfield, and for a brief, beautiful moment, it actually looked like the curse might be broken. Baker had swagger, confidence, and he led the Browns to their first playoff win in forever, but that relationship deteriorated rapidly, ending in a bitter divorce that left everyone involved looking bad. And now we're in the Deshaun Watson era, which has been nothing short of a catastrophe. The Browns gave up 3 first-round picks and handed him the largest fully guaranteed contract in NFL history, $230 million fully guaranteed. And the results on the field have been absolutely abysmal. Watson has looked nothing like the player he was in Houston. The injuries have piled up, the production hasn't been there, and the organization is now stuck in an impossible situation, handcuffed to this massive contract with no clear path forward. This is the context that Shedeur Sanders walked into. This is the graveyard of quarterback careers that he's being considered for, and the absolutely wild thing is that he doesn't seem even slightly intimidated by any of it. He carries himself with this unshakable belief that he's different, that he's the one who can finally break the curse. And after what happened on that practice field, a lot of people in the Browns organization are starting to believe it too. Let me tell you something about Shedeur Sanders that separates him from every other quarterback prospect in this draft. This isn't just a talented college player hoping to make it in the NFL. This is a fully formed brand, a business empire, a cultural phenomenon wrapped up in the body of a 22-year-old quarterback. Shedeur Sanders understands the modern sports landscape better than executives who've been in the business for 30 years. From the moment NIL became legal in college sports, Shedeur wasn't just participating in it, he was dominating it. We're talking about endorsement deals worth millions of dollars before he ever throws an NFL pass. Partnerships with major brands that treat him like an established superstar. A social media following that rivals players who've been in the league for a decade. He's built this empire while also performing at an elite level on the football field, which is absolutely remarkable. And he learned it all from his father, Deion Sanders, the man who revolutionized what it means to be a professional athlete. Coach Prime didn't just teach Shedeur how to play quarterback. He taught him how to build a brand, how to control narratives, how to leverage attention and turn it into opportunity. When Deion and Shedeur went to Jackson State, they didn't just win football games. They transformed the entire program into a national storyline. Attendance skyrocketed. Media coverage exploded. The school made more money than it ever had before. And Shedeur was right there in the middle of it all, learning how to operate in the spotlight. Then they moved to Colorado, and the Prime effect went nuclear. Colorado football went from an afterthought to the biggest story in sports literally overnight. Every single game was a national event. The merchandise sales were record-breaking. The attention was unlike anything college football had ever seen, and through it all, Shedeur was the starting quarterback, performing under the brightest spotlight imaginable while building his personal brand to new heights. This is what makes Shedeur different from every other prospect. He's not intimidated by pressure. He thrives on it. He's not worried about the media attention. He courts it. He understands that in today's NFL, success isn't just about what you do on Sundays. It's about what you do the other 6 days of the week. It's about building a brand, engaging with fans, creating content, and becoming a cultural icon. And Shedeur has already mastered all of that before even entering the league. The Browns players see this. Myles Garrett and Jerry Jeudy recognize that Shedeur isn't just a quarterback prospect. He's a generational talent who brings an entire ecosystem with him. He's someone who can elevate everyone around him both on and off the field. He's the kind of player who can transform a franchise not just through his performance, but through his presence. Now let's talk about what actually happened during those throws in practice, because the details matter here. The Browns coaching staff set this up to be as difficult as possible. They wanted to see how Shedeur would respond to adversity, how he would handle the pressure of going up against an elite NFL defense with minimal support around him. It was a test designed to expose weaknesses, to humble the hyped prospect, to show him that the NFL is a completely different animal than college football. The offensive line he was working with was basically a collection of backups and practice squad guys. These aren't the finely tuned athletes who protect the starting quarterback. These are guys fighting for their jobs, guys who've never worked together as a cohesive unit. The receivers were second and third stringers, players Shedeur had never thrown to before, with no timing or chemistry established. And the defense they were facing, that's the terrifying part. The Browns' first team defense is legitimately one of the scariest units in the entire NFL. Myles Garrett coming off the edge is a nightmare for even the best offensive tackles in the league. The guy is a physical freak who can take over games single-handedly. Denzel Ward is one of the top cornerbacks in football, capable of completely shutting down an opponent's #1 receiver. The entire defensive scheme is complex and aggressive, designed to confuse quarterbacks and force them into mistakes. This defense makes life miserable for experienced veteran quarterbacks who've been in the league for years. So when Shedeur stepped into that situation, everyone expected him to struggle. They expected to see a college kid overwhelmed by the speed and complexity of the NFL game. They expected panic, rushed throws, poor decisions. Instead, they got a masterclass in composure. On that first drop back where the protection broke down immediately, Shedeur didn't panic. He felt the pressure, moved subtly in the pocket, and made a throw that should have been completed. The incompletion wasn't on him. Then, on the next 2 plays, he absolutely carved them up. The first completion was thrown into a tight window with a defender draped all over the receiver, but Shedeur put the ball exactly where it needed to be, leading his guy away from the coverage. Perfect ball placement, perfect timing. The second completion showed his processing speed. He recognized what the defense was doing pre-snap, adjusted accordingly, and got the ball out quickly to the right read. These weren't easy throws against soft coverage. These were NFL-caliber throws against one of the best defenses in football. The most impressive part wasn't just the completions, it was his demeanor. He looked completely unfazed by the whole situation. There was no panic, no frustration, no sense that he was out of his depth. He carried himself with the confidence of a 10-year veteran who's seen it all before. That poise, that calmness under pressure, that can't be taught. You either have it or you don't, and Shedeur clearly has it. The players on both sides of the ball recognized what they were seeing. The defensive players, guys who face elite quarterbacks every week, knew they had just been picked apart by a kid who hadn't even been drafted yet. The offensive players saw a quarterback who could elevate their game, who could make the kind of throws that open up the entire playbook, and everyone in that building understood that what they had just witnessed was special. Now imagine being in the Browns front office right now. You've got this impossible decision staring you in the face, and there's no clear right answer. On one side, you have the analytics department, the numbers people who've built their entire careers on data and probability models. They're looking at Shedeur's college stats, the level of competition he faced, the sample size of his performance. They're running projections and simulations trying to quantify his potential transition to the NFL, and they're probably being cautious, warning about the dangers of falling in love with a prospect based on hype and a single practice. Then you've got the Deshaun Watson problem looming over everything. $230 million fully guaranteed. That contract is an albatross around the team's neck, limiting their flexibility and making it incredibly complicated to bring in another quarterback. If they draft Shedeur, they're potentially creating a quarterback controversy that could tear the locker room apart. If they don't draft him and he becomes a star somewhere else, they'll never hear the end of it from the fans. But on the other side of this equation, you have something that can't be quantified by spreadsheets or algorithms. You have Myles Garrett, the face of your franchise, essentially telling you that this is the guy. You have Jerry Jeudy, one of your most talented offensive weapons, envisioning his future with Shedeur. You have coaches and scouts who were on that field reporting back that what they saw was truly special. How do you ignore that? How do you put a number on the impact of having your team's leaders completely buy into a prospect before he's even drafted? The pressure on general manager Andrew Berry is absolutely immense. The fan base, which has been unified in misery for decades, is now fractured into warring factions. One side is screaming to draft Shedeur no matter what, convinced he's the savior they've been waiting for. The other side is terrified of making another massive mistake at the quarterback position, arguing that they need to figure out the Watson situation first. Social media is exploding with opinions, hot takes, and conspiracy theories. The national media has turned this into a full-blown soap opera, with every sports show debating what the Browns should do. And Andrew Berry knows that whatever decision he makes will define his legacy. If he passes on Shedeur and the kid becomes a superstar for another team, especially a division rival, he'll be fired immediately and become the answer to a trivia question about the worst draft decisions in NFL history. But if he drafts Shedeur and it doesn't work out, if the quarterback controversy destroys the locker room and wastes years of Myles Garrett's prime, he'll be equally finished. There's no safe choice here. There's no way to hedge your bets. He has to make a call, and that call will reverberate through the franchise for the next decade. The analytics guys are probably showing him spreadsheets about historical success rates of quarterbacks from certain conferences, about age curves and injury probabilities. They're trying to inject logic and reason into an inherently emotional decision, but Berry also has to be thinking about that handshake between Myles and Shedeur, about the look on Jerry Jeudy's face when he watched those throws. He has to be wondering if they've stumbled onto something that transcends the numbers, something that can't be captured by even the most sophisticated analytical model. This is where we need to talk about the absolute worst case scenario for Cleveland, the nightmare that should be keeping Browns fans up at night, the scenario that the front office needs to be terrified of. So let's fast forward 2 years into the future and paint this picture. The Browns decide to play it safe. They stick with Deshaun Watson, convince themselves that he'll return to his Houston form, and pass on Shedeur Sanders in the draft. And Shedeur goes to a division rival. Maybe the Steelers grab him. Maybe the Ravens trade up for him. It doesn't really matter which one. What matters is that twice a year the Browns have to face him. Year 1, Shedeur comes into the league and immediately shows that he's the real deal. He's not perfect, but the flashes are undeniable. He's making plays that have the entire league talking. His team rallies around him. The locker room loves him. The city embraces him. And every time the Browns face him, it's a reminder of what could have been. By year 2, he's established himself as one of the elite young quarterbacks in the league. He's making Pro Bowls. He's winning big games. He's everything the Browns hoped Deshaun Watson would be when they gave him that massive contract. And now it's November, late in the season, and the Browns are fighting for a playoff spot. They need a win desperately. And who's on the other sideline? Shedeur Sanders. The game plays out like a Greek tragedy. Shedeur is carving up the Browns defense, the same defense that destroyed him during that practice session 2 years earlier. Myles Garrett is getting pressure, but Shedeur is sliding in the pocket, making throws under duress, looking like a seasoned veteran. Jerry Jeudy is watching from the Browns sideline, wondering what it would be like to be catching passes from the guy he knew was special from the moment he saw him throw. Late in the fourth quarter, the Browns have a slim lead. The opposing team has the ball with 2 minutes left. Shedeur takes over. He's calm, collected, going through his progressions like a surgeon. He converts a 3rd and long with a perfect throw. He hits his tight end on a seam route for a huge gain. And then, with the game on the line, Myles Garrett breaks free. He's got a clear path to Shedeur. It looks like a game-clinching sack. The crowd is going crazy, but Shedeur sees him coming. He sidesteps at the last possible second Cleveland extends the play and launches a perfect deep ball down the sideline that hits his receiver in stride for the game-winning touchdown. Myles Garrett is left on the ground, pounding his fists into the turf, knowing that he tried to tell everyone 2 years ago that this kid was special. The camera catches his face, and you can see the anguish, the regret, the frustration of being proven right in the worst possible way. The Browns fans file out of the stadium in stunned silence. They've just watched the quarterback they passed on beat them in the most painful way imaginable. And they know with absolute certainty that this is going to happen twice a year for the next 15 years. Shedeur Sanders is going to haunt them, torture them, remind them of the biggest mistake their franchise ever made every single time they play. This is the nightmare scenario. This is what happens when organizations ignore the obvious signs because they're too scared to make a bold move. This is the consequence of letting fear and analytics override what your eyes and your best players are telling you. And this is exactly what the Browns are risking if they don't act decisively right now. The truth is, moments like this don't come around often in the NFL. You don't get many chances to have a potential franchise quarterback fall into your lap, have your team's best players immediately recognize his talent, and have all the pieces potentially align for something special. The Browns have spent 25 years searching for a quarterback. They've tried the safe picks, the high draft choices, the veteran acquisitions, the reclamation projects. Nothing has worked. And now they have a chance to get someone who might be truly special, someone who their own players are already ready to follow into battle. Myles Garrett's handshake wasn't just a friendly greeting, it was a message to the front office. It was him saying, "I've carried this franchise on my back for years while watching terrible quarterback play. I've given everything I have to this organization, and I'm telling you right now that this kid can be the answer. Don't waste my prime years. Don't make me spend the rest of my career wondering what could have been. Get this done." Jerry Jeudy's reaction wasn't just professional courtesy, it was the recognition that his entire career trajectory could change with the right quarterback. He's seen what elite quarterback play looks like. He's been on teams with talented passers, and when he watched Shedeur throw those passes, he saw something that excited him, something that made him think about what his stats could look like, what the offense could become, what this team could achieve with the right leader under center. The players have spoken. The evidence is right there in front of everyone. Shedeur Sanders came into a hostile environment, faced one of the best defenses in football with minimal support, and looked completely composed. He passed a test that most veteran quarterbacks would struggle with, and he did it with the kind of confidence and poise that you simply cannot teach. So now the Browns have to decide who they're going to listen to. Are they going to trust their analytics department and their spreadsheets? Are they going to let fear of the Deshaun Watson contract paralyze them into inaction? Or are they going to trust their eyes, trust their players, and make the bold move that could finally break the curse that's haunted this franchise for a generation? Because here's the reality, if they draft Shedeur Sanders, they're not just getting a quarterback, they're getting a leader, a brand, a cultural shift, someone who can transform the entire identity of the organization. They're getting someone who's been preparing for this moment his entire life, who understands the pressure and embraces it, who has the talent and the mindset to be truly special in this league. Yes, there are risks. Yes, the Deshaun Watson situation complicates everything. Yes, there are no guarantees in the NFL, but sometimes you have to take a leap of faith. Sometimes you have to trust what your gut and your best players are telling you. Sometimes you have to be bold enough to make a move that could define your franchise for the next decade. The Browns are standing at a crossroads right now. One path leads to more of the same mediocrity, more cautious decisions that lead to the same disappointing results they've gotten for 25 years. The other path is uncertain, risky, and potentially franchise-altering in the best possible way. The players have already made their choice. They've shown the front office what they believe. Now it's up to Andrew Berry and the decision makers to decide if they have the courage to follow through. What happened on that practice field wasn't just another prospect visit. It was a moment that could define the future of the Cleveland Browns. Myles Garrett's handshake, Jerry Jeudy's nods of approval, Shedeur's performance under pressure. All of it adds up to something that feels bigger than just football. It feels like destiny knocking on the door, asking if anyone's brave enough to answer. The draft is coming, the decision has to be made, and one way or another, the Browns are about to find out if they have the guts to seize the moment or if they'll spend the next decade regretting what could have been. The curse has haunted Cleveland for long enough. The question now is whether they're ready to break it, or if they'll condemn themselves to another generation of quarterback purgatory while watching the answer to their prayers succeed somewhere else. So what do you think the Browns should do? Is Shedeur Sanders the real deal, the franchise quarterback who can finally end decades of misery in Cleveland? Or is this all hype, another false prophet who will join the long list of failed quarterbacks? Do Myles Garrett and Jerry Jeudy see something real, or are they caught up in the moment? Should the Browns figure out the Deshaun Watson situation first, or should they draft Shedeur and deal with the consequences later? I want to hear every single opinion you have. Drop your takes in the comments right now. Tell me if you think the Browns should draft Shedeur no matter what. Tell me if you think they'd be crazy to create a quarterback controversy. Give me your predictions for how this whole situation plays out. And if you enjoyed this breakdown of one of the wildest stories in the NFL right now, make sure you hit that like button. Share this video with every football fan you know, because this story is just getting started. Subscribe and turn on notifications because you know I'm going to be all over this as the draft approaches. The Shedeur Sanders saga is going to dominate the conversation for months, and you don't want to miss a single development.